Welcome to the talk show at the 92nd Street Y, and our guest tonight is the multi-talented and multifaceted Jesse Eisenberg. You know him from so many movies. You remember he received an Oscar nomination for The Social Network, in which he played in the what do they call those? Bioepic? Optic?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, when they, so it's really a, yeah, right, of Mark Zuckerberg.
Tragedy.
Yeah,
ominous, yeah.
But we've seen him in many films, Roger Dodger, Adventureland, Zombieland, which I think is coming back as a sequel.
Yeah. Right.
Holy Rollers, ever seen Holy Rollers? You must see Holy Rollers.
There's a room of people that might have seen this room, yeah.
The film Now You See Me, which I think has been two versions of that, and iterations is the third one.
Twice, yeah.
And he's been Lex Luthor in two Superman movies, and in a third one as well. He has a movie that I want to discuss that he's, I think, just finished, in which he plays the famous French mime Marcel Marceau as a boy.
Yeah, like in his 20s, he saved kids during the war. This was during World War II, and he,
Marcel Marceau has a Holocaust story.
Right, exactly.
And we're going to tell it as Jesse Eisenberg. He's back here on our stage. We've had him before. He's back on our stage because there's an off-Broadway play that he has written. It is his fourth play off-Broadway. It is the only play in which he's not co-starred or starred, and we'll talk about that. It's called Happy Talk. We'll talk about that in a moment. Susan, do we have water? Anyone? Walt, if we can get that. Happy Talk starring Susan Sarandon. This is, again, the fourth play that he's had off-Broadway. And that play, by the way, closes on Sunday. So you still have an opportunity. It's produced by the New Group, and it's at the Pershing...
the Signature
Theater
on 42nd Street.
On 42nd Street. So, and I've seen it. I've written about it. It's a great play. We're going to hear about it as well tonight.
Thank you.
You know, I don't know if... I think I mentioned this the last time you were here, but, you know, this area is... It's not just the 92nd Street Y. It has significance for you. I met him when he was a boy. I was assigned to write about an off-Broadway play at the Jewish Repertory Theater, which was around the corner.
It's not there, right?
No, it's not there anymore. But it was around, I think it was on 89th Street. I don't know if anyone remembers where it was. I went to see a play off-Broadway starring Theo Bickel and a boy called Jeffrey Adam Eisenberg. You were 12 or 13 years old. I can't remember. Maybe you were a little older.
I was a little older, but
you were playing
12 or 13. So that was appropriate.
He was playing a boy who was having his bar mitzvah,
right.
Being coached by his grandfather, Theo Bickel, who was a Holocaust survivor, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And when the Holocaust survivor hears that Ronald Reagan is going to be making a visit, thank you so much, making a visit to Bitburg, you may remember that, he decides to kidnap his grandson and take him to Bitburg, where he can have the bar mitzvah at the cemetery while they're protesting the President of the United States.
Right. My father, Theodore Bickel's son, is a speechwriter for Reagan, so that's the link.
Forgot about that.
And he's so disgusted that his son is writing this.
Right. His son is writing the speeches, and his grandson he wants to purify his grandson, and they do this incredible thing. He takes him to so the whole second act takes place in Germany.
That's right.
So that Sunday in the Arts and Leisure section on page 2, there was this gigantic, this was in the day when they have long think pieces, gigantic photo of little Jesse Eisenberg, Adam Eisenberg, and Theo Bickel together. Right. And so when it was, I met your parents a week or two later because they invited me to the cast party. And your parents thanked me so much.
Oh, really?
So I have been taking credit for years.
Yeah.
That was a long wind-up to say, I discovered him.
Yeah.
And I feel beholden for that way. I bring him back all the time. So yes.
Thank you, yeah.
Do you remember that time? Because the truth is, there were no movies at the time. You hadn't even been on that television show yet.
Right, that's right, yeah.
What was that like?
Very fondly, I remember, because I was allowed to go into New York City by myself because I was living in New Jersey. So it was like not only this play that I really liked being in, but it was also like symbolic of my independence. Even though the play is about a boy who gets kidnapped during his bar mitzvah, it somehow indicated my great independence as an adult.
You had been doing plays before that, right? You were like essentially a child actor. I think at 8 you were in a play.
Yeah, I did like children's theater, like non-professional on the weekends.
In New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey. So this was like my first thing that felt like a professional thing
Well,
I auditioned for.
It was off-Broadway.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I loved it. I mean, I do remember like having like kind of a similar relationship to theater that I have now as an adult, which is that like, if you're like a perfectionist and if you're kind of, at all neurotic, then it's kind of like a very taxing experience to do every night. And I remember having that feeling then, and I still have that feeling now. It's nothing that disappears with experience.
Okay, so you weren't traumatized by it because you ended up becoming a playwright.
I love the medium more than anything. To say that I'm not traumatized by it is also not true. No, because I find it in some ways increasingly traumatizing as I become like more self-aware and more critical of it. Like now I'm aware of like the apparatus that surrounds theater. Like, my last play I did in England, and like I was aware that the critics were there that night and stuff that I wouldn't be aware as a younger person. So in some way, by becoming more experienced, I'm in a way aware of the apparatus that makes me more anxious. Yeah.
Well, how did it play out here? We're going to talk about Happy Talk in a moment. You didn't write yourself a part.
Yeah.
So this is the first of the 4 off-Broadway Jesse Eisenberg plays in which you sat in the audience and watched. That must have been a different experience. And was there less anxiety for that?
Yes, or at least a different amount, or at least you can drink before. I find it like equal parts excruciating and also like a great honor, or whatever that feeling is supposed to be, because I'm so honored that these 5 like amazing actors, and they truly are, they're like some of my favorite actors, irrespective of them being in this. So I feel like so honored that they do this every night, and I know how taxing it is, having done it myself. So I'm amazed that these 5 people do this every night, that they're doing it exactly right now. In fact, right now as we speak, it's just starting. And on the other hand, I feel like, God, I've burdened them with this thing, and why did I saddle them to this thing, and this horse that goes in the wrong direction? Why did I just strap them to it? But
when you're in the plays, maybe you don't have emotional energy to do that.
No, it's just I feel like I'm in the trenches with them, so,
That's right.
So I don't feel the same guilt, So, and I usually have the most stressful role. So, like, I feel in a way that it's like mitigated by the fact that I'm up there with them, and this is like a totally different experience. I can only watch the play from the booth where the stage management sits, and it's behind bulletproof glass, or at least I hope it's bulletproof. And it's probably not bulletproof, but. And I don't want to test it out, but I can only watch it from behind glass, because I feel some feeling, some sense of removal.
Please tell us you're relieved to be here tonight and you're feeling less of that by being with us rather than there.
Yes. I mean, they like doing. I mean, I talk to the actors and everything. Like it's all in my mind. It's this kind of irrational fear that everybody must hate you and they're disappointed. And yeah, it's funny. That's not how people actually think. But I've never considered how other people actually think.
I was thinking about. It's been over 20 years since that play, The Gathering, that was right around the corner from here.
Yeah.
You have been unbelievably busy. I mean, you've had, I think, over 20 films probably at this point.
Yeah.
You've written 4 plays. You starred in 3 of them. You've written a collection of short fiction. You have a regular humor column for The New Yorker and McSweeney's. You've had a child.
Yeah.
Right? That's busy.
Yeah.
By the way, in the 20 years, I've done nothing. I feel like I've accomplished nothing. So, let's talk a little about like this multivaried, multifaceted career. We see you. You reveal yourself on stage at the Y, and there's a genuine Jesse Eisenberg that you're seeing here. You have the persona of a very anxious, hard-charging, but anxious, neurotic Jewish guy.
Right. Yeah.
I said that delicately.
Yeah.
So
all I heard was hard charging.
Yes,
yeah.
right. But that he liked.
Yeah.
He's going to go home and tell people
Yeah.
that.
I say I'm hard charging.
He referred to me as hard charging.
Yeah, exactly. And nothing else.
So did you know you were going to put together this kind of a career? Because you do know it's a highly unusual career to be both a playwright and an actor, an Academy Award nominated actor, who does both dramatic roles and comedic roles, who also writes short fiction as well as humor pieces. You're busy all day, and you have a young kid.
Yeah. No, he's a problem. I mean, I would say, well, first of all, thank you for characterizing me as that. That's very flattering. I mean, I guess the way I think about it is probably that, and I'm just thinking about it for the first time now, because the way that you frame it is such that, how do I get things done? How do I reconcile like being nervous and fearful about these things, and as well as doing all them? And I would say those two things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they're entirely related. I have such a fear of failing in one area that I feel like I have to do something else in another area. And if I read about like a gymnast who's like a few months older than me and in the Olympics, then I think, okay, I have a few months to learn the horse thing. And so it's just a constant state of jealousy, self-hatred, anxiety, so that ends up producing a lot. But it's almost 90% is fear, 10% is like enjoying the accomplishment.
But you notice he didn't give any percentage of relief, right? You're not relieved by saying, look, I'm leaving film now to write a play, and that will reduce the anxiety that I felt about that movie I just left, because I'm now working on this. I'm also working on a book. You're not relieved of any of these moments of anxiety, or?
No. I mean, despite taking a cocktail of relieving pills, no, I don't know why. I don't know why. And when you characterize it like this, I do question it. But of course, in the moment, who can think that way? In the moment, you think this didn't go well today, or I didn't do a good job in this particular thing. I mean, if you're kind of if you're probably healthy and sane, and you're in a position where you're constantly being criticized, even if it's good criticism, or let's say half good criticism, it can be unnerving, right? If you're not kind of, I guess.
But I thought you said you told me just recently you didn't read the reviews of Happy Talk, right?
No, I don't read reviews of anything I do, but I just mean being in a position where you are opening yourself up to criticism. Regardless of your relationship to the explicit criticism, you're just in a position where you're on display in some way, and it's unnerving. If you're healthy mentally, I would assume it's unnerving, unless you're because the alternative is you're arrogant and you think you belong, constantly exposing yourself. And I don't know, that to me seems like an unhealthy approach to it. Anyway, why did I get here? Probably
because you were saying you were flattered by how I sequenced you to different careers.
Yes. But of course, it doesn't seem that way to me, because I can't look at it in a macro way. You look at it in a micro way, and God, did I wear the wrong shirt to the thing? I mean, that's, I guess, just the way my mind works. And perhaps it's cultural, and we kind of talk about this all the time because we come from the same background, and I probably 90% of the people here too. And I don't know. There's something cultural, and so when I think about it in terms of culture, I think about it in terms of it's related to some kind of survival, assimilation, or or feeling like the need to succeed, being part of an alienated culture, and therefore you have to work twice as hard. I mean, this is classic in anthropology and in culture, and I imagine there's some element of, maybe that's why they say Jewish people have that, either those aspirations or successes or neuroses. Maybe it all comes from the same. I'm sure it all comes from the same thing.
And prostatitis.
What's that?
And prostatitis. I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah. And Tay-Sex. But yeah, I assume it all comes from the same thing.
So I just want to say, now that you're seeing, if you haven't seen the genuine Jesse Eisenberg, what I love whenever he does this with me is that I remind him that once I had his good friend Kristen Stewart on stage.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they've made 3 movies together. You were in a Woody Allen film together, and you were in Adventureland, and there was another film.
Yeah.
And you said, because I had her on stage, and he says, she's a total wreck.
Very anxious.
Yeah,
very anxious.
Compared, right? And it's true.
Yeah.
The poor thing.
Right, and yet she comes across, I would say, on screen more. Well, no, actually, that's not true. She comes across as quite. Can be quite neurotic, actually.
Yes, but if she were here, it would be worse.
Really?
Yeah, she's very anxious about these things.
And a brilliant performer, and I think the two things are entirely related. In fact, I think a story that I think I told you once is that the first time I acted with her, she was like, I think 17 maybe, and she called cut in the middle of a scene because she said, no, I'm lying to you, which in acting terms is like a thing, if you feel like you're not being authentic in the scene, this is like an acting school, you say, lying is the kind of colloquialism. And I remember thinking like this 17-year-old person is so unbelievably self-critical and she was doing amazing in the scene, that she had
She called cut.
That she called cut because she thought she was doing terribly. Yeah, so yeah, that's neurotic. I mean, but I see that across the board, kind of people who are good at what they do tend to kind of also worry about it. I mean, I guess the two things must be related.
Yeah. Let's talk about Susan Sarandon and this play. Why don't you tell the audience about the play? And I'd like...
Like the storyline?
Yeah, tell them what you think the play's about. You wrote it.
Oh, sure, yeah. So Susan, but it took me 100 pages to write it, so I guess it'll be a long time.
It's harder. I wrote about it. I can do it quickly, but I would rather you do it.
Oh, okay, so just briefly, she plays a character named Lorraine, who's in the suburbs in New Jersey. She's performing in local community theater production of South Pacific at the JCC.
At the JCC.
And she's playing Bloody Mary. And her husband has MS, and he's quite sick. Her mother is off stage, an unseen character who's very, very sick. And her mother's home health aide, who lives with Lorraine, Susan's character, is a Serbian immigrant who's undocumented and wants to get her citizenship. So she asks Susan, hey, you know so many people, can you find me a husband so I can get married? And
for green card purposes.
What's that?
For green card purposes.
To get a green card, right, that's right. And Lorraine, who's a kind of diva, she, and a narcissist, she takes it upon herself to kind of turn it into like her show, increasingly at the expense of this Serbian home health aide. And so it's my fourth play that kind of features, and this is unconscious, but of course it always comes out this way, features kind of like a, xenophobic American with a person who's not American, and the kind of culture clash that creates. And this is, but in the case of this, I'm not playing the American, but otherwise I have.
Well, right, well, you gave Susan Sarandon your part, basically.
That's right, yeah.
And I would say, because I've seen the other three plays, given that I know you so well, and we see how you present yourself here at the 92nd Street Y, you write about nasty people great.
Oh, thanks.
No, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really know how to deliver lines for a nasty, narcissistic, dark side of the person's personality.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like any of that is you. Where is this coming from? Because all four plays, they share things in common. First of all, you have like, in almost each of the plays, you have the roommate from hell.
Right.
Someone who shows up in your house,
yeah.
right? And that person is going to make life miserable, right? I mean, the play, when you visit in Poland in The Revisionist with Vanessa Redgrave,
right.
Every one of those plays has that in common.
Right.
And it's a dark side of the human personality.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of, in an odd way, it was interesting because I felt that your characterization of Mark Zuckerberg was similar.
Right.
Also mean, nasty.
Right.
In some ways, jealous.
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem like there's a theme here.
Yeah, I guess I can't like relate to that psychology, but I see it in so many people, and so the interesting thing that happens when you start to write somebody that's nasty is if you're a sensitive writer, you end up just instinctively humanizing that person because they're on stage, and so you're kind of so you end up having this interesting kind of juxtaposition between somebody who's quite nasty, but at the same time figuring out why they're nasty. And to me, that's obviously like a more interesting character than somebody who's nice and kind of figuring out why they're nice. To me, that's just an easy psychological portrait.
So in all four of those plays, in your mind, what you've also tried to do, and I think there's some truth to this, is to humanize them to some degree to find out why they are the way they are.
Yeah, that's right.
And would we say that Susan Sarandon's Maureen you have a woman with the self-regard of a Hollywood legend,
right,
who is really just performing at the JCC,
yeah,
and that what you're seeing is another way for her to perform because she's not really performing up to her in her own expectations of what she should be doing.
Yeah, except I don't think she thinks like Broadway would be any different than what she's doing. I think she kind of just looks at the world as like her stage, and if you're lucky enough to see her, then it's, you've been blessed. I think so. No, which is I think narcissists tend to see that. I don't think, in my experience with narcissists, they don't tend to like look at the scale of what they're doing as much as the immediate reaction they get from the people that matter to them.
That's interesting. So you're saying in the play, you don't think for her, even her orchestration within her home
is enough.
Is enough. It's challenging for
Yeah,
her.
because narcissists, in my experience, tend to be like cannibalistic, so they kind of just eat whatever is in front of them, eat the people in front of them, and so like, and like. A narcissist would find, a kind of animal that's entertained, in the house, and that would be enough for them. I think because it's the pathology that outranks the career achievement.
So Sarandon, somebody reached out to her and said, "This is a role of a lifetime," and said, "Look, if you want." She is the play.
Yeah.
She's in every scene.
Yeah.
She's what's the term of it? She's like chewing the scenery.
Right. Yeah.
She's by intent over acting.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly
you
right.
wrote someone. You had the director Scott Elliott.
Exactly.
Must have said to her, "Susan, you really have to overact here."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, a lot of the direction was like, this might feel weird initially.
Over the top.
That's right. Yeah, it's always strange for an actor to do that because you're constantly, encouraged to play it realistically, especially with her, long film career too, which of course is a more kind of intimate medium anyway. But there was kind of a turn when we got into the theater where she, I think, felt a lot more comfortable being a little broader, is how we would call it.
Did your description of the play in writing it, was it easier, more interesting for you to do it as an experience, to explain it, than if I had asked you to tell us about a new movie you're in that you didn't write?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Are you more invested in that way? That was more, because I thought that was a very lovely way you described your play.
It's funny. I have criticisms of both of my with a movie you're kind of like, because I do press for movies. In fact, I did it today for a movie that's coming out in July. And in a way, when you're acting in a movie, especially because movies are so expensive, you're kind of like a salesman for the movie. Because I didn't write it or direct it, so in a way, I'm kind of like an outsider salesman. So I can say it's brilliant and everything, and that's kind of what you're asked to do. And sometimes the movie actually is brilliant, and you don't feel like you're, saying something that's out of turn. But with a play that I wrote, I always feel like I'm kind of giving like a bullet point thing for something that I feel can only be expressed in the 100 pages that it's written in. That's pretentious, but I guess that's how I feel. I feel like kind of harder to reduce it, I guess.
Now you've carved out a writing life for yourself. I mean, if you divided up your time, you're making a lot of movies, but you're writing in 3 other mediums. Mm-hmm. So obviously, this is something, as the 8-year-old who was on stage, this was, I think I remember you also said you played the guitar as a kid, if I remember.
Occasionally.
You told me this.
Yeah.
I remember everything.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're on my stage in the 90 Seconds to Rewind, I'm going to remember.
Yeah, got it.
So, but I'm wondering, the writing life for you, does it appeal to you in a way that, that is very different from acting? That maybe you could even see yourself? And the reason I'm going to mention Woody Allen at some point, right, for other reasons. Sure. But he's written many, many films, and he wrote many plays, and he starred in many, and he wasn't in some.
Right.
And so you're now having similar experiences. Is the writing life for you as gratifying as being in front of cameras or on stage?
I think it's probably alternatively satisfying and unsatisfying. So, having a bad day on a scene where you didn't feel like you kind of accomplished the scene as an actor in a movie is probably equivalent of feeling like you walked away and didn't get the appropriate, I don't know whether the characterization correct, writing something. The difference with the two, of course, is that you can kind of edit your stuff, and with a movie, it goes to another person to edit. Is kind of out of your control. So in that way, it's like kind of, I wouldn't say less satisfying, but I would say more frustrating because you're not in control of it. The way I deal with it is just by never watching the movies I'm in, because it's just endlessly frustrating. Because if you didn't do a good job, then you think, my goodness gracious, it's going to be all over the world. If you did do a good job, but it's not edited correctly, or you feel like the music underscores you in a way that doesn't support what you were trying to do, it's just endlessly frustrating. And so I just don't watch it. And then I kind of have this relief while I'm filming because I didn't watch it, and so I'm kind of, I'm not like encumbered by some unconscious feeling that I'm going to have to confront it later. You know what I mean? And so I stopped watching the things I'm in, and I also stopped reading the things that I've written like years later. But I mean, that's less of an issue because no one cares.
Can I tell you what bothers me about that answer?
Okay.
And I am not licensed as a shrink.
Yeah.
But you're not willing, you're talking about the parts that you don't like, the frustrations that create the anxiety. And I'm also interested in the actual experience of writing versus acting. Like, can you have fun and not worry, or maybe you're saying, I actually can't separate out the feeling of that I could have done better. that maybe that is who you are, that I'm always thinking about what could have been done better, and as opposed to walking away glorifying how fun that was. Because you're not focusing on that. You're not saying, Thane, I got to tell you, there's nothing like sitting home all day and writing. And to be in front of a camera and to take direction from people, it's what I do. But I actually think that living the life of a Tolstoy in an attic appeals to me. You might have said that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Can I use that then?
You can.
Okay. No, I mean, I don't know. Like the movie I just finished was Zombieland, and it's an incredibly taxing experience, unlike what you might suspect as an audience goer, because it's not like a Holocaust movie, for example. In fact, it's probably as far away from that as possible tonally, right? But as an actor, it's a 4-character ensemble movie.
This is still with Woody Harrelson and Emma Stone. Yeah.
And so they're brilliant, funny people, and so it's this and. The actors, because of the nature of the movie, it's using the actors' personal appeal that's partly what the appealing thing is. It's not that we're playing these, obscure, weird characters. It's actually whatever our personal charm is the thing that is in front and center of the movie. Unlike playing Marcel Marceau, which is kind of dive into a character.
We're going to talk about that soon.
So anyway, doing a movie like that, I remember I had 2 days that I went above and beyond what I wanted to do in the movie, but there was like a 45-day shoot. So I guess I walk away thinking, okay, there were 2 days where I had these great improvisation moments. This is how I think. And those were fantastic. But then my next thought is, oh no, those weren't in the most significant scenes that would have warranted the improvisation. So yeah, this is, I guess, just how I think, which is probably better for the therapist than a 92nd Street Y. But yeah, I guess that's how I can honestly answer your question.
You just reminded me of something you once told me that also goes back to Kristen Stewart. So you got the picture, right? 2 young actors at the top of their game. They're also close friends, and they're both neurotics. And you said to me that at the Woody Allen film that she counted who had more lines.
Did she?
Yeah, you told me this. I think she
counted it.
Yeah, that you guys. Yeah, that there was something that it would be so much better if you remembered that.
Yeah, I know. God, it sounds like a great story I once told.
Because it's really looking bad that I made that up. Because it really, I didn't. You did.
What was the?
It was. Well, she just said there was no reason. She was just.
I wonder why.
Maybe she was saying, guess what? I have more lines than you.
Did she? I wonder.
Yeah,
why.
Or I have more. Yeah.
Huh. I defer to you, and you're deferring to me. So I do defer to myself ultimately. But I don't recall.
Let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg. Because of who he is, and because of his youth and your youth, you're going to live with him for a long time.
Right.
And I was thinking when I saw the movie, I remembered a few things. I thought you were incredible in the movie. I mean, you've all seen the movie. He was just amazing in this film. And there were so many really fun moments that I really vividly remember. But there was some initially, before the film was released, there was pushback from Facebook, right? He was worried about the portrayal. I know there's a joke that when you did Saturday Night Live, he showed up on this monologue.
Right.
And that was cool and weird at the same, right?
Right,
As if
exactly.
you had met him before, and then he shows up live.
That's right.
After being ticked off at his...
Exactly.
Right, but unlike Citizen Kane, where William Randolph Hearst, right, tries to sabotage the film.
Oh, is that right?
That never happened, right? I mean, Facebook, I thought, actually even threw a party for the film or for their their employees.
That's right.
In other words, they were good-natured about it.
Ultimately, yeah.
I'm just wondering, was there, as the film was coming out, now we take it for granted, it's got 2 billion people on the platform. Right. But that was a pretty big deal, that there was a movie, a major motion picture was coming out about Facebook's creation and its creator, Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
Were you aware of the intensity of the way, the pushback that the online world was concerned about this movie?
Only because at one point during the rehearsal process, I asked them, "Can you please put me in touch with the people?" I thought if you're playing a person who's living, you want to meet them, and they kept saying, "Oh no, I don't know, we're not in touch with them" or something. So I said,
none of them. The Winklevoss twins.
Well, I didn't want to meet them. I mean, especially
because they beat you up.
Yeah, they're so tall, and it'd be a strain on my neck. And anyway, no, I mean, I just wanted to meet, the guy I was playing. You want to just study the person, whatever. So then I was driving up I said, okay, I'm just going to drive up to wherever it is, upstate California.
You actually went there?
I was in my car going, and I got a call. Like, they said, what the hell are you doing? You can't do this. You can't meet the people or something. So that's when I realized, oh, there is some...
So you were going to go into the lobby reception room and say, I'd like to see Mark Zuckerberg. I'm playing him in a major motion picture.
Yeah, I mean, I assume they know who I was anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It was released, the press...
No, and they were worried about it.
Right, but I didn't realize that there was any discord up until I got halfway up the 101 or whatever. So, and so...
Did he tell you eventually on Saturday Night Live that night, you know what, I think it was a good movie, or that I liked the way you portrayed me? Did he have any comment about it?
No, I mean, we met for like 30 seconds in the Saturday Night Live dressing room, and it was just strange. It was just strange, obviously, because I guess, God, I would not want to be in his position either. I mean, because I know from acting in movies and being a public person, and I'm nowhere near as public as he is, obviously. He's on the cover of newspapers every day. I know, and scrutinized by the world, and I know how media has such a more significant relationship to readers than oftentimes than truth. The kind of a narrative of something has such a greater impact on public consciousness than oftentimes the more nuanced truth, of course. So I would not want to be in the position of having my story told by other people, in a way that is narrative and scored and fun, and that you could eat popcorn and watch it, because there's nothing that's going to be stronger than that. There's nothing you could do in your life that can be stronger than, a kind of entertainment, a narrative.
So did David Fincher, the director, or Aaron Sorkin, the screenwriter, since you didn't get a chance to meet Mark Zuckerberg, did they give you direction about who they think he was, or did you invent a fictional Mark Zuckerberg?
All three. Yes, exactly right. I mean, Aaron Sorkin wrote obviously a brilliant script, and David Fincher had really strong ideas about how the character would behave, partly because David Fincher has really specific tones that he works with, and so he's not afraid to have characters that are either mercurial and at best, or kind of dark at worst. So because it was a movie through his lens, it ended up being kind of as you said, kind of shaded in that way. And then me, because what I'm interested in my own performance. I'm interested in that kind of thing. It's what I've written before I was in that movie. The characters I write for myself are not dissimilar.
Well, that's what I was saying. It was remarkable that it's as if you wrote that part because you're capable of writing that kind of a part.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I like that too. I mean, these movies, Now You See Me, that I was in fact, that when I first signed on to the first movie, the script was in a state of flux, and they were getting a new writer, and they asked me kind of how do you see your character? And I asked to play this kind of role again, this kind of character who's darker, obnoxious, or kind of this intellectually superior kind of person. I don't know why that kind of thing appeals to me, probably because I envy somebody who can be that, somebody who can maybe has the same mind as me, but kind of uses it as a kind of weapon rather than me, who's probably uses it in a way that feels self-effacing.
I hope the audience is picking up on this. I think it's extraordinary. I mean, you have played that role so great over so many years.
Oh, thanks.
And you are not that.
Yeah. But I suppose
you feel it. You know it emotionally. You understand it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Of course, right, exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of actors do that. A lot of actors want to play the tough guy, and sometimes they are actually very strong, but it's because they're fear. And acting in a lot of ways can be this kind of cathartic outlet of things that we don't get to do in our real lives. And in fact, I go to an acting teacher who actually says, who encourages me in that direction, in the sense that if you have some purpose, then the character will be imbued with something that is indescribable but valuable, because you have some purpose to play it. Even if it means in this project you have a problem with your father, and why don't you use this experience, this movie experience, to work out something in your own mind that you have a relationship with your father. Even if the contexts are very different. And in that way, it makes art. It makes kind of a real nice, valuable artistry out of acting. Even if it's in a commercial movie, it can still have some valuable artistry.
And that is the art of it, right?
That's right.
Otherwise, you'd be playing yourself. And you're so not an intellectually superior, nasty person.
Yeah.
That is not who you are.
Yeah, and I guess it has some value for me. Maybe it's the arrogance that I strive for. I don't know, because as somebody who doesn't have that, it seems like, wow, that must be a much more comfortable life to have.
Well, here's an irony, a paradox. You have just finished a film in which you portray a young Marcel Marceau. Now, everyone, this is 92nd Street Y audience, much higher game. Everyone knows who that is, the world's most famous mime. Jesse Eisenberg characters are hyperverbal, whether they're here on the 92nd Street Y or on films or in plays that you write. Susan Sarandon has more words than anybody.
Yeah.
You're hyperverbal. So you played a mime in waiting, a guy who's, tell us a little about this film.
He talked a lot before he became a mime, so, so it was okay. Yeah, and sometimes during. Yeah, it's this amazing story. It's a true story. It's, kind of an unbelievable story. Although, as you know better than anybody, every Holocaust story is its own amazing story. If somebody survived, chances are their story is mind-blowing. So, and that's certainly the case with this. Although with this, he was not sent. He was not captured.
But he plays a resistance fighter.
Yeah, that's right. So the story is, his dad's Polish. He's Jewish. He's living in Strasbourg. I mean, his parents are Jewish, but his dad's from I forgot, near where my family's from in Poland, coincidentally. And anyway, they're in Strasbourg, and he's a pretentious artist. He's kind of an intellectually superior, pretentious artist. This is, and he's doing these kind of one-man shows, low rent, kind of cabaret shows.
Is he doing mime?
He's inspired by Chaplin, so it's it's Chaplin, but it's not what you think of when you think of Marceau.
I see.
And so.
And this is during Vichy?
This is, what year would this be? This is
No Invasion.
Movie starts in 39. So the French, Germans are approaching throughout the whole movie, and it becomes increasingly perilous. It takes place from like 39, I think, actually to 45. But anyway, so the story is, so he plays this. So he's doing these shows. He has no interest in the problems, foreseeable problems that some of the other characters are seeing. And his cousin, this is the true story, his cousin George, who's played by Geza Rohrig. I don't know if he's ever been on your stage. He was in Son of Saul. He plays the guy in Son of Saul. So he plays my cousin George, who gets 200 kids. This is true, that were bought from Goebbels by the Rothschild, Baroness Rothschild. Anyway, he gets and
they were headed to a camp, probably.
They were from Munich. They're from Germany, right? Their parents are kidnapped. Parents are captured and killed. And the kids are bought and given to the head of the Boy Scouts, which is Marceau's cousin. And so my cousin asked me, hey, can you come and entertain the kids? I'm hiding them all in this castle that was given to us by the Rothschild. And Marceau is reluctant. He has no interest in kids. What am I going to do there? I'm an artist. Stop thinking I'm a clown. I'm not performing for kids. I'm a serious artist. And he gets there and he sees these kids. And over the course of weeks, he likes a girl there, so he kind of goes there to kind of impress her, and through impressing her, he sees that these kids actually like him, unlike the people at the cabarets where he's performing. And he sees, wait a second, I have like this great audience. And so initially, it's this kind of selfish guy who uses his art, to kind of just be entertaining and to become, but then he realizes it has this value. And as the country delves further, becomes further imperiled as the Nazis are approaching, he ends up joining the resistance with his brother, who was a former kind of army guy. He was in the French army, Elan. This is all true. It's just an amazing story. So he becomes part of the French resistance. And at some point goes back and ends up saving 200 kids, doing these journeys from France over the border, over the mountains and over the Alps to Switzerland, saving kids. He ultimately did multiple trips across the border saving these kids using his mime. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think about, but like hiding in trees and keeping the kids quiet through mime, or kind of giving signals through his art. And so it's this beautiful story of kind of like an artist learning that his art has real world value.
That is sort of like Marcel Marceau has his own Schindler's List story, and you would think that story should have been told earlier, right? I mean, did this story was not known, or did someone own the rights to it for 20 years and just now is only getting it made?
He resisted talking about it, and I don't know why, except my only thought is that he really treated his art seriously, and of course, so many artists do. But he was up against a feeling of that mime wasn't always taken seriously. So if Philip Roth takes his art seriously, the rest of the world does too. And so, but I think for Marceau, he really had to kind of push against certain cultural forces that were kind of pushing against mime. And so I think maybe this is just my psychological reading of it from afar, is that maybe his desire to be seen as like a singular artist maybe didn't want to be colored by the fact that he had this kind of heart-wrenching story. I don't know. I can't think of any real reason why somebody wouldn't tell this story. Or it's humility. I don't know. Maybe some kind of humility.
But you know what's interesting about it is that for the people, even Elie Wiesel, who was on this stage many times, talked about sort of the only way to express the Holocaust is through silence. Because words, as Primo Levi said, can't be used to express this offense, the demolition of a man. That's actually an actual quote. That words will be defeated because they'll never be able to explain the ordinary life words can't be used to explain the extraordinary.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So there is something, to me, very metaphorical about the mime.
Yes.
Right. He is a Holocaust survivor of sorts.
Right.
Because he was Jewish and he could have easily been killed.
His dad was killed at Auschwitz.
Right. He could have easily been killed, and in a way, he's not speaking about it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
By profession, it's a very powerful image of the Holocaust survivor artist who actually used the art to save other children and then went silent professionally.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose that's maybe intertwined with what they, I guess, refer to as survivor's guilt.
Absolutely.
You know, how do I refer to this thing that is unspeakable and, where you lost all your family too?
Yeah, and also I must say, we talked about this a little backstage. If you've been reading me at all for 20 years or so, I mean, I hated Life is Beautiful. And by the way, I usually don't like most Holocaust-related films, and you could look that up. You'll see I really, this is an issue for me. Sure. Aesthetically.
Sure.
But this I like, I haven't seen it yet, because a few things. First of all, it's not set in a camp.
Right.
And the clown, the mime, is using this in Life is Beautiful. The father is playing the role of a clown.
Right.
Right, and he's there to sort of deceive the child into not realizing where he is.
Right.
And in a way, Marcel Marceau, not in a camp, was also trying to calm the kids down.
That's right.
And to make them able to do what they needed to do, to move them, so
That's
to
right.
speak.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, if I was writing about this, I might. This is one clown that I'm going to appreciate in the Holocaust.
Yeah. And it's a real person. He's dealing with kind of the real frustrations of being an artist. In the context of this.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Speaking of real persons, I wanted to mention a moment ago an anecdote. Let's go back to the Social Network. I had Larry Summers a couple times on the stage here at the Y, and one of the nights, do you remember from the movie? He's in the movie. And it's not a flattering scene of the president of Harvard.
Right.
And I asked him, in fact, one of the years I had him, I actually played the scene. And I asked him, would you be good-natured enough to watch the scene? The line is that he basically throws the Winklevoss twins out of the...
Right.
But the line in the movie, if you remember it, is where he says, one of the Winklevoss twins says, "Sir, this is a company that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, or millions of dollars."
Yeah.
And he said, "Really?"
Right.
And he says, "No, sir, I don't think you understand." And he says, "I'm the former Secretary of the Treasury. I think I'm quite capable of understanding." So the idea that this maven did not know what Facebook was going to be, and Larry Summers was here and admitted he was very good-natured. He said honestly, he behaved that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
he said I did not treat them nicely.
Oh, really?
And I dismissed the idea of Facebook. I didn't take it seriously.
Oh, wow.
Let's talk a little about Woody Allen, if you don't mind. He's been on this stage a number of times. He hasn't been on this stage recently. One can only imagine why. He's still waiting for at least one, if not two films to be released that are finished. You made 2 movies with him. You are actually one of the actors, certainly of the major actors, that did not take a public position to condemn him. And I want you to know, as a longtime law professor, I still think a person is innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And if the Connecticut prosecutor's office isn't prepared to bring a case, and if the hospital doesn't actually see anything, then I obviously wasn't there.
Right.
But it seemed to me that to ruin this man's life is beyond extreme. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
But I am going to say, I was shocked at the speed with which all the other actors lined up to condemn Woody Allen and to publicly state that I will never appear in a Woody Allen film again, and I'm going to donate my money that I just received to some victims' abuse cause, which is good. I'm glad. You should definitely donate to that.
Yeah.
But not because he necessarily did anything. So anyway, can you tell us what your thinking was? You obviously, someone might have called you. Ronan Farrow might have called you and said,
yeah, I got a lot of telephone calls. Yeah, I mean, I just didn't feel like comfortable, publicly. I mean, there was nothing that I could add to the conversation that would either further condemn or, in some way, what is the word? What's that? Exonerate. Yes, exactly. Right. Exonerate this. This
is the 92nd Street Y.
Exactly.
It's a room full of a thesaurus.
Right. Yeah. It's a room full of. Yeah. Thank you. Oddly enough, the decision to not say anything was also made in the context of spending the last 10 years volunteering at my mother-in-law's domestic violence shelter, where we're trying to raise money, and if anybody has a public story of abuse or something, they take it as, we immediately are, not only sympathetic to the victim, obviously, but eager to try to raise money for new victims that were coming in. My wife and I
Aren't you on the board of that?
Yeah, my wife and I had a campaign to, we raised maybe $500,000 to pay off their mortgage in the last few years. I gave a lot of my money to this domestic violence shelter. And so I would say my main extracurricular interest outside of entertainment is working either in arts education, where my wife works, and my wife works in arts education in Title I schools, or at her mother-in-law's domestic violence shelter. These are the causes that are kind of close to me.
So this was for you already a real issue, something you were already sympathetic to.
Yeah. So when this came out, or at least when the kind of trend of like giving the money back or something was, because I like that idea, obviously, because money goes to that. But if it's in like the name of kind of condemning somebody who it's not really, I just felt like as an actor, it kind of didn't, as an actor and as an employee, it didn't feel like my place to make a stand that would have any kind of impact one way or the other, and it didn't seem appropriate to me. That said, if somebody wants to say something, that's their prerogative, and I don't mind it. If somebody wants to donate money to a domestic violence shelter, I think that's fantastic, obviously.
You were speaking about your mother-in-law, but I just forgot a moment ago to mention your mother, because I know that when you were growing up, she was a children's birthday party clown in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering.
Yeah.
She must love the fact that you're playing Marcel Marceau.
Loved him, yeah, loved him.
And she must have thought he was, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Loved him. And she took her own art very seriously. So she performed like on weekends, just for some extra money, so she performed on weekends locally in central New Jersey. And so I imagine everybody here must have seen her at some point. But she, in retrospect, only as an adult did I realize that, she was up at 8 a.m. every day, tuning her guitar to the piano and, getting the face paint and the weird shoes. And so to an outsider, she looks ridiculous. In fact, she was sometimes pulled over for speeding in a clown costume, with like the propeller on top of the hat. And to an outsider, especially a traffic cop, she looks ridiculous. But as like somebody who was like, backstage with her, seeing her do it in the morning, it must have instilled in me in some unconscious way the seriousness with which all actors, all performers take their job. And so, Marceau is a clown, in fact, in some ways quite explicitly, but took his job so seriously, and in some ways that I am as well. And so it probably instilled in me some kind of work ethic that at the time I didn't realize.
And something else, which is something I'm sorry I didn't think about until you mentioned it before, which is, for the most part, clowns are entertaining children.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
In the case of Marceau, he changed the audience dramatically, right? Which is, all of a sudden he had a different audience, and it was kids who, as you said, appreciated him more.
Yeah.
You, as a little boy, watched your mother be appreciated, not by a policeman who pulled her over, but by New Jersey children.
That's right.
And so there is something powerful in that makeup. That's right.
Yeah, it's really weird because, you watch Marceau now, and to me it's like, it's funny, I don't know how I missed it. I mean, I guess because it's generationally, like I really didn't know much about him. And then watching him now, it's like good stand-up comedy. It's like watching a good stand-up comedian. Like, they have good bits, it's clear what they're doing. And he was just, he's the best there was. But yet I do those same routines because I learned them for the movie, and I do those same routines for my 2-year-old son, and he's in hysterics. Like, actually, and understands it. Like, I do a thing, you could
Yeah.
You drink a thing, and I gave the glass to my 2-year-old son, and he pretended to drink it. And it's amazing that it can, and yet when you watch Marceau do it now, I, as a 35-year-old person, think it's hysterical, like in a modern adult way. And it's an amazing art form that really can transcend age, whereas my son watches, stand-up comedy. Obviously it has no relevance to him. And so it's really an amazing art form that transcends age and transcends, different kinds of imaginations, that my 2-year-old son can be so inspired by it to make his own imaginary glass. And at the same time, I'm laughing because there's kind of an intellectual component, because he's a disgruntled waiter, and you see the disgruntled waiter give the guy the glass, and he's annoyed, and then the disgruntled patron is annoyed. So it's an amazing art form that really can transcend tone and can transcend appeal.
I'm going to ask a question that you might end up having to answer to on probably some of these talk shows. And this is called the talk show, so you can get it here first. We don't have that anymore so much. Physical comedians, the Charlie Chaplin-esques, right? The Keatons. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe we do have them, the rubbery, styled. And I'm wondering whether, as an actor who's done comedic roles, whether this is a loss for us. You're saying, when you said before, maybe it's a generational thing. I never thought of Marcel Marceau before in this way. But we're not appreciating them in the same way. We're not even seeing them.
I think that's partly has to do with like just the cultural diaspora of everybody watching different things. So like just because maybe there is and I don't know it. Maybe there is. Like I'm just thinking.
You're saying there may be people out there who.
Yeah, and we're just watching different things and appealing, and different things are appealing to different groups of people now because of the bifurcation of media, or something, or dissemination. Wait, what's multiple bifurcation? Bifurcation
yes,
is two. Multiplication?
Multiplication
of
yes.
two. Is that a word?
This audience would know.
Is that a word? Is that a real word? Anyway, so and because I'm just thinking, like in the '90s, of course, Jim Carrey was kind of like, I would say, a kind of a modern version of that. And I can't think of anything.
Can anyone think of anyone today?
Bill Irwin.
Right, but in a kind
yes,
of like.
But Bill Irwin on stage as to New Yorkers, who we all know, Bill Irwin.
Right.
But I'm saying in a commercial setting. On major motion pictures, no, I can't think of anyone.
I don't know. It's interesting because comedy tastes change. Although you could say like, well, maybe Woody Allen's been able to make movies that people find appealing for 4 decades or something. But tastes in comedy changes. And I would say when you're saying it, I'm thinking, well, this is to my advantage because I can't slip and fall in a funny way. So my humor is verbal, and and that seems to me the kind of comedy that exists now, right?
I'm going to take one. I'm going to ask one more question, and we'll take some from the audience. I want to talk about this is again a more serious subject, like with Woody Allen. When your second play came out, the third play was a smash on the West End, right? The Spoils, right? Was a smash on the West End. But you actually took the revisionist, didn't you not, to Tel Aviv?
Yeah.
So I remember a story that you were there during the summer of the Gaza War of 2014. And I don't know if you remember the story of Jesse Eisenberg in a car on Route 60, I think you were, with your buddy, when the sirens went off and Iron Dome was doing its thing.
Yeah, you're right.
And this kid from central New Jersey, American Jewish guy, is running around trying to find where to hide.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, where did you go? Like,
there was like a kind of a
You got out of your car.
We got out of I was on the way to the airport, so I was on whatever the major highway is there, and we just stopped in the middle. I mean, I was with my friend who spent 6 years in intelligence, so he was ready to go. He practiced this, did dry runs of it probably in his driveway. So we just every car stopped in the middle of the highway.
Nothing you had ever seen, right?
Oh, it was so bizarre.
But
I ran to I don't know what looked like, I guess to me, like kind of a sandbox thing. Yeah,
that's right. I think I remember. The one thing I want to maybe ask you about, and I think the audience might find interesting, which was that you were asked toward the end of the war, and you were quoted frequently because there were actors that were critical of Israel in how they were conducting the war in Gaza. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a quote from you about, I was there and this is an impossible situation, and the rockets were flying at us at that time. I don't know if do you want to speak to that?
I don't think I said that. I mean, what I do remember is thinking. I do remember thinking I don't feel unsafe in any way. I mean, quite frankly, even when that happened, I mean, I'm aware, and I understand it's not totally safe.
You mean saying you were where you were exposed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It didn't feel unsafe in any way, and I was happy to go and see the show. I did not. I don't remember, nor would I have wanted to say anything that was political, because I still think it's healthy to be critical of a government, especially a government that I feel, in some way connected to by virtue of being Jewish, So I think it's possible to be both, to go there and also be critical of the government and, whatever, or, but I wouldn't have done that publicly because I just don't think it's my place. I'm
trying to remember what the quote was, but it was.
I just remember thinking, I do remember doing an interview and they said, are you worried to come here? I just said, no, I don't feel worried, no. And I was there because they were doing this play of mine and they did a great production and they were going to cancel it. Because of what was happening there, and no, I just wanted to.
The play was not canceled.
No, it wasn't canceled,
Yeah.
and it was a nice, it was a nice experience, and I have a lot of friends who are Israeli, so I was there. But yeah, no, but I wouldn't have said. I don't think I would have said anything.
You didn't take a political position.
No, nor do I think I am. I don't know enough. I mean, and I read so much about it. I mean, who doesn't? And goodness gracious, you know way more than most people, and I just don't feel equipped to say anything of value about it.
No, the reason I remember this was because you may remember the last Gaza war, there was a number of Hollywood actors, I mean, even Selena Gomez, there were a lot. And so it was really, you may not remember this because maybe you weren't here, but like you and Adam Sandler and maybe one other person were being quoted as saying more sympathetic things about Israel's experience and what it's like to be living in that center of the world.
Oh goodness. Okay, I don't remember that as much as like just thinking that I do think there's a separation between going there for a play that you wrote that's being translated, and then my play is about this reconciliation, and so I don't think in any way there was no political accoutrement to or there's no political implications to my going there. If anything, I was going there to promote my play and to see my play, which is about, reconciliation between, two generations, a survivor and somebody whose mind is on totally, on his navel.
By the way, that play co-starred, it was you and Vanessa Redgrave.
Right, yeah.
Was she in that play?
She was not in the...
Did she go to the Tel Aviv, was she in the Tel Aviv production?
No, it was in Hebrew.
Oh, it was in Hebrew, so you weren't in it either.
No, I wasn't in it.
Oh,
I went there to just watch it.
Oh, I didn't realize. See, I had thought that.
Right.
So she wasn't there.
No, she wasn't there, and no. Yeah.
All right, let's take some questions from the audience. Someone was going to ask this. Do you think you would ever want to direct a film?
Yeah, I mean, I made like a pilot that didn't get picked up, and then I wrote and was going to direct another pilot with J.J. Abrams that didn't get picked up. So, so it's not a mutual feeling, it turns out. So. At some point, I suppose so. I don't really have the bug. I know a lot of actors have it. I think probably by virtue of feeling out of control a lot of times, in their lives. And I just don't have that feeling because I do this other stuff that kind of sates me.
Well, there is a difference, though. My understanding is that in theater, this audience knows this, the playwright is king. And in films, the director's king. And the screenwriter is a secondary or tertiary role in movies.
Yeah, I think there are exceptions to both of those things, but certainly Aaron Sorkin, is
right.
You want to get every word right. But in plays, it's just the strangest experience. I'm working with Susan Sarandon, she's right now, and she's trying to get every word right. She asks me, can I say the instead of because of this and that? And you're like, yes, of course. And I know her on a movie set because I am that way on a movie set, changing things at will, and so. But
she, the sense of respect and reverence for the playwright is different. And she recognizes it.
It's completely different. The tone in the room is completely different. I have these somebody like Vanessa Redgrave. She was 77 at the time, coming over to me and this word. Going over each word or apologizing to me after a show where she said the instead of that. And then I'm on movie sets where casually you'll do the scene once as written. Kind of offhand so they can have it, so to speak. It's just a strange thing because they're not that much different it's really not that much different a medium, and yet this treatment of the writing is really different.
And also, I'm responding to that because what you said about actors wanting to direct, to have a level of control, you're having that anyway as a playwright. You're given that, you're gifted that by virtue of writing plays rather than movies.
I suppose so. If that is the desire, then I suppose that's it's relieved.
You want to hear a great Vanessa Redgrave anecdote? It's really good. It's with him. When he does this play with Vanessa Redgrave, I had a teenage daughter with a crush on him, so I bring her backstage to say hi to Jesse Eisenberg. And outside the dressing room is Liam Neeson. And I said, oh, hi, Mr. Neeson. Nice films, you know.
Good
nice
work.
career.
Casual, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to make a big deal.
Like-
I wanted to say I have a very special set of skills, you know. You know that movie, right?
What is that?
What's the name of that movie? What? Taken.
Oh, wow.
That's the famous line. He says, listen to me carefully. I have a
Okay.
very special set of skills.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I wasn't heads up enough to say that.
Got it.
So I walk into this dressing room. Jesse's there, my daughter's there, and first thing I say to him is, Liam Neeson's outside,
Yeah.
right? And like, I'm here, do you want him to come inside? And he says, no, leave him out there.
Because he wasn't there for me.
I know!
Oh, got it. I see.
That was what was so great. And I went, wow, you know, thank you for that respect. You're going to talk to me and my daughter, and you're leaving out. Vanessa Redgrave was his mother-in-law.
Right.
And he was taking her home.
Yeah, he was there every night. Yeah.
He came every night to walk her home.
Yeah.
How sweet is that?
Yeah.
And he's physically capable of protecting her, we know.
Yeah.
So,
right, exactly.
But I love that. I tell that story all the time.
Yeah,
You
that
said,
was strange.
Leave him out there.
I was so nervous that he would come because, you know, he's great and everything, and also kind of, he's an imposing man or something. And then he had so when I first met him, it was right after he saw a preview, and he had this amazing suggestion of that she touches one of the picture frames at the end, and I just thought my God, I never met a guy who's over 6.5 feet who has a good suggestion that's sensitive about touching a picture frame. But let's just do it. It's fantastic. You know, it was surreal. You know, because
he came every night.
And he came all the time, and you know, she carries with her an unusual group of people that you wouldn't expect. Well, you know, she's related to him, but but she just has a kind of an unusual gaggle of people, politicians and politicians and actors, and she, as does Susan, of course.
Right. Well, what is your favorite Jewish holiday and why? And it says, there's a second piece. Says, how did you relate to Jewish stories as a child? Did it positively influence your creative, critical approach to storytelling?
Wait, what was the second part? Sorry, I had a funny answer that I was thinking of for the first.
All right, don't lose the funny answer.
I'm not.
So how did the Jewish holiday? He said, how did you relate to Jewish stories as a child? Oh. Did it positively influence your creative, critical approach to your own storytelling?
Oh wow. The first thing I was thinking of that might be funny is that Jews do sad holidays really well, you know. And I remember, and happy holidays kind of half-ass it, they build the thing in the backyard with the gourds and everything, but it doesn't feel exactly, you know. And the sad ones we do really well. I mean, my mother-in-law had this amazing Haggadah that she made that was told because she ran a domestic violence shelter, and she's an activist, a brilliant woman, and she kind of was able to tell the Passover story from in a way that kind of emphasized the feminist liberation aspects of it, these kind of these stories of tragedy, and then of course there's triumph as well there. You know, we do those well. Hanukkah always feels like a kind of bastardized Christmas. It didn't feel like the authentic experience, and maybe that speaks. And maybe I'm saying something that's horrible now, and forgive me if I am. I'm really not an expert.
I think you have a point.
And maybe
nobody who does Yom Kippur like Jews.
Right, exactly.
Name me one people that celebrate it like we do.
That's the one I was looking for. Right. Yeah, we atone, 364 days a year, and then there's Yom Kippur. And so maybe that says something about Jewish culture, and to me, that's what, that's the kind of comedy I like, and the kind of entertainment where it's riddled with also, feelings of competing with the dark side of of life. And so to me, so maybe there's some link there. I don't know.
That has in some ways informed your own writing.
Yes, which is to say, can write jokes, but they have to be kind of, influenced or, somehow infected with some worldview or struggling against difficult things.
But you've written Jewish characters also.
Yeah.
I mean, the plays, to some degree, are written, they're Jewish characters. Yes. And you've portrayed Jewish characters, and that's why I said, among other films, go see Holy Rollers.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays a Hasidic Jew, a drug dealer.
And I think part of the reason that I think Jewish people are entertaining and dramatic. You know, these are people who question things, that's dramatic. These are people who have a sense of humor and a self-awareness, that can be very funny. And so inherently in Jewish culture, there are things that are dramatic enough to warrant many plays, which is probably why a lot of Jews are in, you know, kind of the right plays.
But if I were to say what I think most people in this room are thinking, so it's time to maybe say it, since I've already invoked Woody's name, you are kind of a Woody Allen artist of your generation. Mm-hmm. You are. You've followed a path that's very similar mm-hmm. as a writer, as a humorist. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Without Feathers, mm-hmm. the books that Woody Allen wrote in the 70s that were hilarious.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, does that, obviously people have said that. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether when he asked you to be in 2 of his movies, did he pull you in for that reason? You remind me of myself when I was a young man.
Possibly, except he would often tell me, please don't do it like me. Because I would say, like, because I would say, I don't know how to do this particular scene. I know how you would do it. And he goes, don't do that. It would be unnatural. It would be unnatural. So do it like you. And I said, you know, it's going to be less funny. He goes, yeah, I know. Just, you're going to have to do it like you. So, there were certain scenes that were like compromised because I couldn't do exactly him. I mean, I appreciate the comparison, of course, because I love, you know, his stuff. But I will say, like, I know objectively he's so far superior to me in these ways, you know, comedically. And anybody who's in comedy knows this, like, knows that the nuance that he was able to bring to things, anybody who's tried comedy and thinks about Woody Allen knows that he's doing something better than what anybody else has done. You know, whether or not you might not like him, but, you know, people who are similar to me who are in comedy know that he's doing something that's unparalleled and might not be met. You know, but in terms of the stuff that he's done, yeah, we have completely different approaches to acting. You know, we would talk about it all the time because, you know, he has no anxiety as an actor. You know, we talked about when he was doing Play It Again, Sam, and I said, didn't you get nervous before your shows? Because he's seen my plays, and I would tell him, you know, I'm petrified before even the last 200th performance. I'm absolutely petrified. And he says, no, I would go in, I would go backstage right before we had to do the show. I would eat a hamburger, and I would go on stage. And
this is great.
Yeah.
Are you not loving this? He does a great Woody Allen.
I said, you ate a hamburger before the show? I can't eat, you know, weeks before the show. And he would say, no, I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. It was very easy. I just, you know, would get bored doing it for so long. And so this is his total approach to acting. And when we did, like, press for this last movie that we did, we would talk about that, like, in the press, you know, because he said, if I played the character, it would be funnier, but it would have no emotional inner life. And Jesse did it, and it's less funny, but it has emotional inner life. You know, because he speaks in this kind of unfiltered way, because he, you know, he's just blunt in this way. So that's kind of exactly how I would characterize it. I was playing the part, and, you know, when I'm playing the part, I'm in tears at half the time, you know, because it's this dramatic thing. But I miss a lot of the jokes. You know, or I don't consciously miss them. I know I'm not going to achieve them the way he would achieve them, and it just has to do with that he's a superior comic, but as he would say, not as good an actor. You know, not as good, like, with the emotional stuff. And so this is something, you know, he talks about freely. He has no concern to kind of self-analyze, you know, obviously, you know, and so. Yeah, and so in a way, we're divergent in that way. I love doing dramatic things and dramatic movies. I think he doesn't have, like, I think he would direct one, but I don't think he gets the same joy in performing in a dramatic role. I just don't think he thinks that there's,
That's
like...
true.
I think he probably doesn't think that he's very good at it, or which I would disagree with because I actually like him in dramatic stuff. But I think also he doesn't, like, see the value in it, like, whereas I see the personal value in it. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, and not necessarily even for an audience, as much as, like, for me, I see it's cathartic for me. I mean, I can think about sad scenes that I've been in, and it makes me cry just thinking about what the characters are going through 7 years later or something. And I don't think he has that feeling. I don't think he relishes that in the same way. So anyway, we're on divergent paths, and thank goodness, because I would never be able to achieve his either output or, in my opinion, quality.
Last question, we'll say goodnight to Jesse. Is there a character that you would love to get a chance to play in your lifetime?
No, I mean, no, in the sense that, like, and I mean this without any kind of humility, like, I've always been, like, maybe it's arrogant to say this, I don't know, I've been given roles that I never expected to be able to get, like a villain in a superhero movie. I would never have expected, just based on my childhood and and thoughts and life and behavior and physique, to get to play like a villain in a superhero movie.
We're talking about Lex Luthor.
Yeah, and like, right, yeah, it was just like, it's
the iconic, the most evil,
yeah,
super genius evil.
Right, and so, they sent it to me because like, the writer Chris Terrio had like seen my plays, and my plays I play a kind of these kind of nasty things, and so he pitched me to the company, and so and they thought it'd be an unusual, so stuff like that comes to me before I would have the even imagination to pursue something like that, and then I have this great movie coming out July 12th, 10th, around in July, mid-July, let's call it. And it's this part that I would think of myself for, but the tone of the movie, it's a movie called The Art of Self-Defense, and it's just, it's been like my favorite.
I'm glad we're talking about that, yeah.
It's like my favorite experience, and if you watch, the trailer is online, but the movie is just so unbelievably brilliant because the tone
Tell us about it.
Oh, so the story is like the story sounds like a well-worn story, but the tone is what makes it brilliant. I mean, and the movie is, several reviews have called it like, the best movie of the year so far. Like it hasn't come out yet, but it's played at these film festivals. It's just brilliant. Like the story is about a guy who gets mugged on the street and then takes karate classes for self-defense, but the karate is kind of like, the karate class is kind of like this cult, so he gets like drawn into this weird cult. But the tone of the movie is so brilliant because it takes place in this like slightly parallel universe where people kind of talk in this very blunt way, and the tone ends up informing what the themes of the movie are, which is that it's kind of like this commentary on like masculinity, on the absurdity of masculinity. Like, so the guy who runs the dojo says, you can no longer listen to this kind of music. You have to listen to heavy metal music. And this kind of silly bluntness is the kind of funny commentary on this is like the way men think in these kind of, these kind of men. And so the movie is just so brilliant. And I would say that is like my favorite kind of part to play because it's not naturalistic. It's a tone that's very strange. And so to me, when I think about playing certain roles, that's less appealing to me than doing something that feels like tonally so strange and indulging in this kind of weird tone, but for a purpose. It's not just in some kind of, experimental, you're not playing a parking garage in St. Mark's Place. It's like it has a purpose and it has something broader to say, and the tone, which is odd, is informing something greater and has value. And so to me, like, that's the most exciting thing, and I would never even think to write something like that, and it's just this brilliant young guy who wrote this and who thinks in this way and allows me to kind of be a part of it.
So you have until Sunday to see Happy Talk.
Oh, yeah.
Mid-July, we have...
this is The Art of Self-Defense.
The Art of Self-Defense. Mm-hmm. The Resistance, which is the Marcel Marceau film, comes out when? Do we know?
They're not sure yet.
We're not sure yet. And you'll be back as Lex Luthor, and I think you're working on a novel or something.
Yeah, I have a novel for Audible, which is like straight to audio. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're tired of reading, your prayers have been answered.
The incredibly charming, entertaining, and multifaceted Jesse Eisenberg.
Thank you so much, Thane.
Thank you.